everyone, welcome to my channel, or welcome back. So today we are going to be doing a video about romance books that are good for people who have never read romance before or don't think that they like romance. So I have a couple of different like subsections. So I have a couple of books that are fantasy books, a couple of books that are like more historical, and then we have a bunch of basically like contemporary romance books that I think would be good for people who are starting out with romance or who normally don't read romance. So yeah, stay tuned. The first book that I want to recommend is 7 Days in June by Tia Williams. This is a contemporary romance story and it is a romance book. So it's about the romance. Romance is the focus. This one follows our two main characters, and they're both writers, and they meet each other at a writing event. Little does everyone know, they had 1 week together many years ago where they basically had this crazy affair, and it went really well, all of that, and then they never saw each other again until this present day event. Then they spend 7 more days together in June, kind of falling in love. So this book is really good for people who don't like romance for a lot of reasons. So this book is about more than just their romance. It has a lot of trauma in it. It's about motherhood, it's about addiction, chronic illness, all of these things combine to make a beautiful, beautiful story. Also, our characters are super messy. They're complicated, they're messy. You really have to work for the romance in this book. It doesn't just kind of like happen. The characters really have to work for it, and you really feel for them throughout the entire story. And with that being said, it is a heavy, heavy story. So you have a lot going for the story. Like, you are rooting for the story. You're rooting for the characters to be together because they have so much trauma and so many traumatic things that have happened to them that you're rooting for them to have this little sliver of happiness. You're grasping at it, and it's just such a beautiful story. Tia Williams just is a beautiful, beautiful writer. So if you're somebody who looks for that in a book, then you will absolutely love this book. That's why this book, I think, is really good for people who aren't typically into romance. The next book that I want to recommend is Before I Let Go by Kennedy Ryan, and this book is actually like a little bit similar to 7 Days in June. When I was thinking about like what this book is about and all of the reasons why I feel like it's good for non-romance readers, I feel like it has a lot in common with 7 Days in June. So if that's a book that you like, you'll probably also like this one. This one is another second chance romance. This is about a couple who got divorced and they have 2 kids, so it's them dealing with co-parenting. So they're constantly in each other's lives, and they're kind of like magnetically pulled to one another, and they kind of can't stay away. So why I think this is good for non-romance readers is that this book is about more than just love. It has a lot of, again, trauma. We have co-parenting troubles. We have grief. We have a lot going on in this book. It's really another book that's pretty heavy. And so I feel like those aspects make it good for people who aren't typically into the romance. We also have characters who are mature. They're in their 30s, they're in their 40s, and so they are real people. They're relatable. They go through a lot in this book. You see them as parents, and you see their lives as real adults who are actually like involved in things. So it does have a lot of heavy topics, things like depression, therapy, etc., but they're handled with a lot of care. And so because of that, I feel like this is really good for people who are looking for a deeper book that's going to make you feel something, while the romance is also still a huge aspect of it. The next book I want to talk about is Things You Save in a Fire by Katherine Center. And generally, I feel like Katherine Center's books are really good for people who don't enjoy romance because they are really like women's fiction heavy. This book in particular follows our main character, who is a firefighter, and she basically has to move to a different place to help her mom. And so she's in Boston in this like male dominated heavy firefighting central station. That's what I'm looking for. She's in this station, this fire station, and it's very like traditional firefighter, like bro environment. So she's going through that while also navigating catching feelings for one of the firemen. Even though she's been told over and over and over again not to date firemen, she's catching feelings and going through that. So this book I feel like is really good for non-romance readers because it really does focus on Cassie and her journey as a firefighter in a male-dominated field. You really follow her struggling through this situation and what's going on in the firehouse. You really see her kind of grow throughout the entire story. Also, the romance, it's very gentle and loving. It's not like overwhelming in any way, shape, or form. It's very sweet and wholesome. It's a good romance. You'll root for the characters, all of that. This book is just very like uplifting and hopeful. You're not going to get those like icky, sticky, sappy love feelings from this book. That's not what this book is at all, which is why I feel like it's good for non-romance readers. The next book I want to talk about is Great Big Beautiful Life by Emily Henry. And again, Emily Henry's books are they're definitely romances. There's no like getting around that, but they are also focused on the people as characters, not just their romantic feelings. And this one especially, because it has kind of like a dual timeline going on, it's really, really good for people who aren't necessarily fans of romance. So this one follows our main character, and she was invited by this woman who's like a famous woman named Margaret. She's invited to be one of the people who is kind of like auditioning to write her memoir. So we have her, and then we also have Hayden, who is the male main interest, the main male love interest, and he is a Pulitzer Prize winning author, whereas our main character Alice is just like a normal writer. Like, she's not like famous or anything like that. And so the two of them are kind of competing to write Margaret's like story. So there is that aspect. And why this is good for people who aren't typically romance readers is because of that secondary story. You not only do you see them like competing to write this story, but you also get to hear her actual story. And there's like this air of mysteriousness all throughout the story that'll have you hooked. You want to learn more about her. You want to learn her story. So that is a big aspect of this book that I feel like is really good for people who aren't necessarily into romance but want to dip their toes in. I also feel like the setting of this book does a really good job of drawing the reader in. It's like this coastal setting, so you're really intrigued by the setting, and that makes you want to keep reading. Also, the characters feel very real and vulnerable. You see them go through things all throughout this book. They're very real, and that makes it good for people who aren't necessarily big fans of romance. Next book that I feel like is really good for this topic of people who don't love romance is another romance heavy book, but it's Part of Your World by Abby Jimenez. Now, I do feel like Abby Jimenez's books are good for people who aren't necessarily like big on romance, but who love like deep emotional stories, because they always have an aspect of like deep character like realization throughout the story. So this one really is a tale kind of like Ariel, right? Like, they're from two different worlds, like they can't be together. So he's like a small town guy and she is like an ER doctor, like big shot, and her parents put a lot of pressure on her, but they're falling in love. So that is like a big part of the story, is their love. But again, their love is not like super sappy. It's not like one of those romances that's going to make you want to like roll your eyes. It's very, very real and emotional. And the things that the characters in this book go through are very real. So they're really, like real life problems that could happen. Like, they're not just having like a random third act breakup for no reason. Like, the reasons that they can't be together are very valid, and you really feel for these characters as you read the book. Also, I feel like this book is good because it has a lot of humor. It's funny. It has a lot of heart. You'll feel for the characters. Abby Jimenez just has a really good way of drawing the reader in, and I feel like her books are really good for people who might not think that they like romance but want to give it a shot. The next book I want to talk about is the most like romance heavy book. Like, this is without a doubt a romance book, but I feel like it has a lot of things in it that make a reader like feel comfortable when they're not necessarily a romance reader. And that book I want to talk about is The Love Hypothesis. Now, I'm sure if you're a romance reader, you're probably like, why would you include that? But hear me out, hear me out. I have some good reasons. So this book is basically a fake dating story. And I think that that's really fun. Everybody, well, I guess not everybody. A lot of people love a trope. I love a trope. The fake dating trope is one that's like really widespread. And this one is just done really, really well. So we have our two main characters and they're both scientists and they essentially fake date. It's such a great story, and I really feel like the STEM aspects in this book are another reason why I feel like people who don't typically love romance will relate to this book, because it is so STEM heavy. We have our main character who is like very sciencey, and there's lots of really sciencey things that happen in this book that will really just draw you in. Also, I feel like this book is like super self-aware, so like it knows what it's doing. Like it knows that it's kind of like a fun, like funny time. It's not trying too hard to be something that it's not. It's just a fun romance that you can kind of turn your brain off and just like really enjoy. It's believable, it's good. I highly recommend this one. Up next, I want to talk about a couple of like historical fiction books that I feel like are pretty good for people who want to dip their toes into romance, because they are romance heavy, but they also have some other tropes in there that I think make it really good for people who are trying to dip their toes into romance. The first one I want to talk about is Outlander. Now, this is one of my favorite books of all time. It is so good, and the reason I love it is because it combines so many different genres that I love all together. So Outlander follows our main character, and she is living in 1945 when she gets essentially sucked back in time to the 1700s, and she's in Scotland. So if you love a Scottish story like I do, you will absolutely eat this book up. So our main character Claire meets our main male character Jamie in the 1700s in Scotland, and so she kind of has to like deal with the fact that she's from the 40s, like she's from the 1940s, and so she has like all of this technology and all of these things that she's used to that the characters in this book like have no clue what it is, and so she has to kind of pretend to fit in. It is just absolutely groundbreaking. I feel like that little science fiction aspect of the time travel really makes it fun to read. Also, I want to say the historical part of this book is a huge aspect. It's a huge part of it is the setting, this is historical things that happen, because obviously like our main male character is used to things going the way that things happened in the 1700s. He's not used to a woman from the 1940s who is used to having a lot of freedom and independence. So there's a lot of like push and pull there. It's just so beautiful, and I feel like if you're looking for a new book to kind of completely suck you in, drag you in, and just become obsessed with, I feel like this is it. It is so good. Not to mention the romance is not cringy. It is beautiful. It's a beautiful romance. You're going to be rooting for the characters, and there's like 100 books in this series, so you'll be going down a long rabbit hole once you start it. The next book I want to talk about is actually a book that I talked about really recently in a video, so excuse that, but that is Lovely War by Julie Berry. This book is a beautiful story, and it follows more than one love story. So this one is told from the point of view of Aphrodite, like the Greek goddess Aphrodite. She's telling the story of two romances that took place during World War I, and these stories are just so beautiful. Again, it has that deep historical aspect where you're getting the stories from World War I, and it's absolutely heartbreaking and beautiful all at the same time. It's stunning. The narration style is just really cool. Something like I've never read before. Like, it's amazing. You get Aphrodite's point of view, you get Ares' point of view, you get Hades' point of view, you get all these Greek gods and goddesses' point of views, and it's just really cool to read that type of point of view. I think I said point of view like 1,000 times in those 2 seconds, but I think you get the picture. Also, these love stories are like tragic and really high stakes. Like, you're going to be rooting for these characters. It's absolutely ridiculous how much you root for these characters. It is just so beautiful and so beautifully done, and I feel like this is really good for somebody who loves historical fiction but wants to dip their toes into the romance. this is your girl, I'm telling you. The next book is a fantasy book, and that is From Blood and Ash by Jennifer L. Armentrout. Now the romance in here is like obviously a very crucial part of this book, but I do feel like the fantasy aspects really hold their own and make you really want to continue reading this book and this series. So this book follows our main character Poppy, and she is a maiden. Basically her life is not her own. Like she is basically under the control of the people above her, and she has like this huge duty and role to fulfill that she has a lot of pressure put on her to kind of carry out. And so you follow her as she's kind of opening up her world and kind of trying to escape that. This book is really heavy on the fantasy, like the politics of the world, all of that, all of the different little aspects of like magical things that are happening in this book. So you have all of that to hold on to as somebody who's not like a big romance reader. Also, we have a heroine who is really strong and capable. Like she is really good at just being herself and being true to herself. So you'll root for her because she is the type of person that makes it easy to root for. Also, it's very action heavy. So like the action kind of really drives the story. There's battles, there's conflicts, all of that. It drives the story and just makes you want to continue reading on, which is why I feel like this book is really good for somebody who is not necessarily like a big romance reader, and it's a slow burn romance, so that also is a good aspect. Finally, I have one more book to talk about, and that is The House in the Cerulean Sea by TJ Klune. This book is perfect for people who aren't necessarily romance readers. It is a story of our main character, and he is kind of like this grumpy man, and he is sent to look after this house that holds a bunch of like magical children, and he has this kind of like romance with the man who runs this home for these children, but the romance is not like necessarily like the forefront of this story. Really, this story is a found family story. So if you love found family, this book, it does found family like no other. It is just so fun and so beautiful. I absolutely love the found family in this story. Also, I want to say this book is like pretty low stakes. So the fantasy in here is low stakes, everything that's going on. Well, okay, so it's low stakes, like it's high stakes because like obviously there's children involved, but it's low stakes in that it's like calm and like relaxing. It's just a really, really beautiful story. I guess what I mean is like it's low like drama and like low angst. Yeah, I feel like that's kind of more what I mean. Also, this book is just so hopeful. It's so wholesome. It's so beautiful. You'll just love these characters just like I love these characters, and that makes it really good for people who are just dipping their toes into romance. So with that being said, those are all of my romance recommendations for people who aren't necessarily into romance. I hope that you enjoyed this video. I hope you found something new to read, and I will talk to you in the next one. Bye!